Invest and prioritize yourself. Your education is valuable, your career is valuable, but so are you and your health. Hi, I'm Siddharth Balasubramanian. I go by Sid. I was born in India, in a town called Coimbatore. I grew up in India for the first 21 years of my life. I did my bachelor's, all of my schooling as well as my bachelor's in India. And eventually in 2008, I moved to the United States to pursue my master's and PhD at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. I spent about 5 years in Ohio, and around 2013, September-ish, I drove to Texas, and I've been living in the Texas area, the North Texas area since then. I've been with quite a few companies here, with Texas Instruments to begin with. The first 3 years of my life in Texas was in Texas Instruments, and then in the Dallas area, and then eventually right now I'm with a company called JM Wireless uh, up in the suburbs of Allen. I identify myself as gay. Acknowledging that took quite a lot of years and experiences, especially because the word gay is associated with something derogatory growing up. And and then you're conforming yourself to societal pressures of, oh, is it appropriate or is it inappropriate? It took me a while for me to come to terms uh, with being comfortable with my own identity. And I have always thought I was breaking gender stereotypes. I love designing. I love colors. I know my colors pretty well. I know my mauve, lavender, violets pretty decently well. And I don't like to talk about football games at all. Generally, I'm not comfortable talking about football games, but typical male stereotypes are expected to talk about football or sports at a bar. I was just battling age. I mean, with all of these experiences, I basically shied away from all of that. I was focusing on education constantly, so I never had to think about any of these. Career started, and then I had to think about socializing and coming up with what do you call templates on how to have conversations. Oh, let's talk about football. So there used to be days when I used to just look up the scores of the football games just before going into a bar or going meeting with a group, just so that I have talking points. Okay, these guys scored 18-3. That's all beautiful. So I can use 18-3 and have a conversation for a few minutes, and then I can deflect it or whatever, and then it can move on somewhere else. These were struggles that I've had. And very recently that I come to terms with, it's been a while. I mean, it's been multiple years in the making, I guess, but right now I'm totally comfortable with completely, you know what, it's okay. My education was sorted out. I was in a decent place in my career. And I reached a point in my life where somebody's acceptance or lack of acceptance didn't really matter to me. It shouldn't matter even at a younger age, but I think the emotional and financial independence that I had uh, helped me accept that particular side of me pretty easily, I guess. So it really didn't matter to me. Okay, I didn't really have to make an announcement nor talk about it. I mean, if it comes, if somebody broaches the subject, yes, I tell them uh, what I identify with or anything with regard to that. But otherwise, it's not a topic that comes up for discussion. And I don't feel that it needs to come up as a topic of discussion because people don't ask anybody, oh, when did you come out straight? Identifying part of the LGBTQ community comes with a lot of caveats depending on where you grew up. Uh, Growing up, so for me, I wouldn't actually attribute to one specific quality, but I would, or one specific experience, but it's a multitude of experiences that I've had. To begin with, as an immigrant person of color, coming out struggles, uh, constant moving around towns growing up, a lack of association to one defined home. Uh, that was a pretty big challenge growing up. I didn't have both the parents in the household growing up, so that was quite a challenge as well. conforming to the expectations of a stereotypical male, which is something that every LGBTQ person in some form, not per male or female, they go through conformance to stereotypes. That is one of the biggest challenges. Moving countries in pursuit of a higher education, that was a big deal at a young age of 21. Navigating the cultural differences of the Eastern and the Western worlds. What is appropriate in the East is not appropriate in the West. What is appropriate here is not appropriate over there. So that's understanding the differences and similarities. That was a challenge. Being a victim of stereotypes of gender, race, culture, creed, and quite a lot more. They helped me navigate a lot of challenges. A lot of very underlying challenges and underlying subtle challenges. It's really hard to articulate them, but they define you. It's like constantly being. It's like cutting diamonds or in a coal mine. I mean, you're constantly being polished, and all of these experiences polish you at the end of the day. And a combination of experiences polish you to be a person, a particular person, and a particular personality. All of these struggles, and the earlier you face these struggles, the more polished you are, and the sooner polished you are. And I feel that was one of the biggest advantages that I've had. A lot of challenges, but I consider them as an advantage because they did shape me to be who I am. They shaped me to be a very introverted person, but it also made me understand how to read the other side, the other people, the other person in a more deeper, profound manner. These are certain experiences that not many people possess. And struggles make it a man. Experiences make it a man. When I say, I mean, it's a typical statement, but I mean everybody. These have definitely influenced every aspect of my life, my personal life as well as my professional life. And when you see all of these challenges coming together, your day-to-day challenge becomes, it's not a big deal anymore. I mean, day-to-day challenges are something that you know that you face the challenge, you measure the problem, and you know you come up with a solution, or you work with a team to come up with a solution, and you solve the problem. The magnitude of this problem becomes very, very minuscule in comparison to all of those experiences and all of the other challenges that have actually been behind me or actually supported me this far. Most of the LGBTQ community members, they have these challenges. Now, the question is, are you willing to acknowledge them? Are you willing to take the benefits of that experience and put it to work on your daily basis? And how do you make good use of it? That requires a certain sense of self-introspection that I strongly suggest most of my colleagues and friends to do. And that has significantly helped me so far. The moment when I came out to my best friend is the most challenging moment that I've actually had. And I can go at length talking about that, but this would not be the appropriate forum for that. But that particular moments that led to that conversation, the moment that led to me saying, hey, I'm gay, it was extremely complex. I don't know how to articulate that particular sequence of thought processes over there. And sometimes you're thinking that you want to build upon the conversation, and then you don't know that you're building. I mean, it's like trying to lay bricks, but all the bricks keep falling off. And you've got to put the flag at the top, really. And you don't know how to put the flag without putting the bricks. And every time you put the bricks, they just keep falling off. That was a very complex thought process that went through. And that was the most challenging moment of my life. And that was the moment that made me realize that such moments can actually exist, where you're trying to do something and they're totally failing right in front of you without you having any control of how to navigate that. That was a big challenge for sure. And I realized that everybody who's coming out, especially people who have been subjected to a very different family circumstances or cultural circumstances or ethnicities, they go through that struggle. If you've been part of a family that's been very, very open, that particular process becomes very easy because it becomes a simple dinner conversation. Hey, you know what, mom, dad, I'm gay. Oh, like, okay, come on, do you want potatoes? Do you want mashed potatoes? That becomes this following up conversation. But this was very profound for me. And I realized, and I'm very, very happy to have had that sort of an experience because not everybody can have that sort of an experience. There are very few people in this world who can have that sort of an experience of coming out and being able to battle through those different emotional layers of emotions, really. To me, diversity isn't defined. Diversity has lots of definitions: age, gender, sex, caste, creed, religion, orientation, everything. There is also another diversity called as diversity of thought. In organizations, you need diversities of thought and diversities of experiences. You don't bring in diversity for the sake of bringing in diversity. Uh, okay, you know what we have? It's then what happens is it becomes more like a checkbox. Okay, you have four Caucasian people, three Black people, two in Indian ethnicities, two Latino ethnicities. Then it becomes a checkbox. This should have been more. What do you call it? More organic. Diversity needs to be built up organically and not by force. The minute you start creating the building of diversity by force, you completely kill the primary intent of opening up to these dialogues. Once you start bridging and once you start opening dialogues and conversations with people, their ethnic diversities or their cultural backgrounds will not come to the foray, but their personalities and their thought process come to the foreground. And that is what we need to have in a boardroom, for instance. If you have the same sort of a personality, regardless of what the race is, you're not going to have progress. But you have different personalities, different schools of thought. That is what is the diversity that I believe in bringing in. It can come from any ethnicities or any diversity or any cultural background. My team right now has quite a lot of diversity. I have people from Vietnam, people from Greece, people from born and raised in America, people of different ethnicities, different cultures born and raised in America. It's a pretty decent, a pretty beautiful mix. And you get a lot of perspectives, you get a lot of experience. Everybody has gone through a different experience. So when a problem comes to the table, when they all come up with their solutions, you see how their brains work. And it's so beautiful to see how their brains work. This person loves to tinker around because that's the experience that he has had. This person loves to analytically analyze something because that's experience that he has had. And once they bring it all together, it's very beautiful to see the final result coming through. That diversity is what I appreciate and value the most, and I believe that is the most important diversity that all of us need to have at all levels of the organizations because that defines the progress. It so happens that coming from different cultural backgrounds offers that diversity of thought. So embracing the need for a diversity of thought in some way automatically means that you're embracing a diversity of culture, but you shouldn't actually see the fact that it's a cultural diversity, but you should actually see it and recognize it as a thought diversity. I'm right now with a company that builds 5G equipment, and we are based out of, we are headquartered in America. We try to do most of our design and manufacturing in America. And I run all of the hardware engineering for the 5G products, and I'm based out of the DFW area. To be very honest, if I look back 7 years or 7 years ago was when I got my PhD, 8 years ago was when I got my PhD, or even before that, before I embarked on a PhD program, that's probably around 12, 13 years ago, I would not have expected myself to be in the role that I am in right now. It all turned out to be a matter of me being flexible and navigating through various opportunities that came about and being open to various opportunities, being open to taking risks were probably the most vital learning that I actually acquired over time. I wish I'd learned that much earlier in life, but I learned it slow, but it's slow is better than not learning that at all, in my opinion. Before JMA Wireless, I was with TI. I was building ICs for a living. So IC design was my expertise. My PhD was in IC design. And before my PhD, I was in India. I had the opportunity to work on India's first university-built microsatellite, and where I developed mostly out of subsystems and qualified them into space environments. And that was a very unique experience that I had received at the ages of 19, 20, and 21. Most of the experiences of what I would have actually done today, it's all thanks to those initial few years of experience. And that basically defined the charter for the rest of my life and the rest of the trajectory of me pursuing a master's, me going on to do a PhD, me staying in the tech field. Did I choose to be in the tech field at the age of 17 and 18? Definitely not. That was something that I was pushed into the Indian educational system, which is a pretty big rat race. And growing up, you either had to be a doctor or an engineer. I chose engineering with doctoring. I couldn't actually make it as a doctor, but I also wanted to have the title of a doctor, which eventually got me to do a PhD, which gave me the prefix of a DR. However, engineering just turned out to be lucky for me because I was very comfortable and very good at math. I did not have to struggle to do well in my math exams or math courses. Physics and math came pretty easy to me, and I don't think I worked hard for that. That was something that just happened to be so. There were certain other places where I struggled with. Geography and history was something that I love, but I struggled with. But I don't. I mean, they're interesting subjects, but I wouldn't actually do a career in history and geography because that's not my forte. Engineering became a natural progression growing up, and there were different kinds of engineering that I did. So at undersat, most of what I did during those projects were things that I would have actually done as a project before I actually learned them in the classroom. And that actually helped me understand the concepts that were taught in class a little better than regular students who did not have that sort of an experience that I had. And this was not an experience that I was being paid for. It was something that I did because I was just motivated and inquisitive and wanting to do it. I was never a person who liked to enjoy or have fun or go watch movies in the theater. So that kind of helped me channel my thought processes and my focus towards education. And I believe I did a pretty good job of making the best use of my time with my education system. And I didn't have to pay much for it either. I got a Fulbright University scholarship, which motivated me to go to the higher state, and did pretty well in terms of coming up with new publications. I had the opportunity to write a book chapter as a student. I even had the opportunity to file a patent with the Air Force Research Labs back in Ohio State. So all of these little successes motivated me to pursue more successful endeavors. And eventually I moved to TI to pursue, typical job progression was to become a faculty or go into the corporate sector. I chose a corporate sector, but I also chose to be a faculty at the University of North Texas as an adjunct, where I used to work 9 to 5 at TI, and from 6 to 9 I used to teach graduate level courses at UNT, which was quite a struggle, especially because of the drives. It was about a 50-mile drive from TI to the UNT campus. And that was a pretty beautiful 2.5 years. I call it beautiful because I didn't have to work there for the purpose of the money that I was making, but I just did it because I was self-motivated by meeting students, meeting people, and trying to make some change. UNT gave me an opportunity to meet with certain students that I would not have met otherwise in any other part of my life. I met people who were working 2 or 3 jobs, coming in there to study in the evening. And for me, they were a lot of, when they appreciated the classes that I actually offered, and they gave me good feedback saying that, hey, we appreciate this kind of a teaching style, we appreciate this kind of an examination and grading style. That motivated me more. And I felt, and as soon as these guys actually went on to take up jobs at Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, some of whom I'm still in touch with, that gave me a lot of joy. And I always try to seek pleasures from the people that I actually help out. And that motivates me to do more and more. And during the course of all of this, I started learning something very peculiar about me, that I was able to transcend emotional and cultural barriers to make connections at a very emotional level, at a deep emotional level. And that helped me do my current job pretty well, wherein I inherited a team of 15 people of very different personalities. And we were initially a startup trying to do different things at different speeds, at different methodologies, and bringing all of these diverse personalities and diverse technical skills and strengths together required a totally different kind of a communication environment to be built around. I felt all of this helped me build onto this, and it prepared me for this particular situation, which I was I was very successful in being able to do that over the last couple of years. And now I have a very cohesive team that works on all of the high-end 5G products that get sent out of the company. I was 19 years old. This was 2005. It was 2005 summer. I was visiting my dad in a different town. He was I was living with my dad, so I just went to visit him. And then this email came, hey, you know what? Next Saturday, we're going to have this meeting, hopefully thinking about who wants to participate or engage in. I chose to go back to my university, get out of this vacation, and put that a priority in my life. At the age of 19, I chose that to be my priority as opposed to spending time with family, spending time on a vacation, going somewhere, whatever. I chose that to be the priority. So my dad immediately booked a ticket for me to come back to my university town, college town. And then I attended that Saturday session. And there were multiple Saturdays and multiple evenings, weekday evenings that took place. And I was pretty active about going to all of them, sacrificed on all of the fancy, oh, let's all hang out at a friend's place, let's go for a movie. That did not excite me at all back then. But this excited me. And it didn't excite me because of the opportunities it would give me. It just kept me very comfortable. I felt emotionally very comfortable doing what I was doing at that point. And I just made best use of that experience. Did I do it with the intent of, oh, will it give me a good schooling eventually? Will it give me a good job? No, I did not, because I didn't know what I wanted at that point. I honestly didn't know what I would do, what I would be doing for life. But that kept me happy and comfortable away from a lot of other stress that I didn't want to deal with back then in my life. And this just played out very easy. I've had a lot of shining moments. I take a lot of pride in each and every one of the small. I mean, they were not big moments, but they were all small ones. The first one would be 2009 when the satellite that I worked on was actually launched into space, April 20th, 2009. And it shows up on the NASA website, and there's a NASA NSSTC ID for it. And I was in the US when the launch actually took place. I was pursuing a master's. It was the spring semester, or the spring trimester at Ohio State, 2009. I cried that night as soon as I saw the news. I mean, because all of us were texting. We didn't have WhatsApp or anything back then. It was just Google, emails, chats, and everything. I cried that night because something that I worked on was actually going into space. Those boxes were things that I've actually touched. My fingerprints are actually imprinted on all of them. If you were to go put a bunch of pencil in and you can take fingerprints. You can take my fingerprints off of those boxes, and today it's space debris. But the fact that something that I created, that I touched, that I worked on was actually in space when I was 21 years old, that was very monumental for me. It gave me a lot of humility, and it also gave me a lot of ego as well, to be very honest, at that age. But that is something that was a very shining moment. Eventually, in 2010, I was invited to Taiwan. Me and my professor, as a result of my work, both of us were invited to Taiwan. And I was awarded the Outstanding Research Award this was at the international level, and this included participants from MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, the biggest schools of Asia, the biggest schools of China, and I won the bronze prize there. category, third level, the third prize level. That was that showed me that, you know what, it doesn't matter which school you are from, because I was always a person, hey, you know what, if you're not part of the top three, you're no good. That showed me that, you know what, your work will define you more, your desires will drive you to be successful more than the school that you're in. And sincerity goes a longer way than just resumes and backings of, I mean, they of course help, but they're not everything in it. And that is another monumental moment that I've had at that age. Uh, Very recently would have been the successes that I've seen with most of my patent filings that have been very successful. But to me, that space, the air satellite that I built, I mean, that I was part of the team that built it, and that has been definitely something that I will cherish for eternity. This is something that I learned from my very first mentor growing up. That was my professor when I was in undergrad. We used to make mistakes in the lab. Me and a friend of mine, we used to make mistakes. Of course, everybody makes, I mean, you're 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids, of course, we're going to make mistakes in the lab. Now, we sometimes burn some of the ICs. I mean, when we're testing them, some of we basically, poof, they just go away. Now, what he used to do is he used to give us an exact replica. It would probably be $1,000 box. I mean, you're giving two 19-year-old kids $1,000 box, and they've already messed it up. And what he'd do is he'd give us another $1,000 box, the same eval board or whatever, and he'll tell us to repeat exactly what we did and fail it, and make it fail or make it reach that moment of failure in a deliberate manner. So if you made a mistake and something failed, and he deliberately made us repeat the very same steps to deliberately make it fail so that you exactly know what caused the failure so that you would not repeat that ever again. I'm a strong believer in acknowledging mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. It's important that you make them early and soon enough, acknowledge the mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and just try not to repeat them again. That's all. And that is something that I constantly communicate with my students in classrooms, my team and my colleagues at work. Because if you don't make mistakes, you're not innovating anything, you're not learning anything new, because only when you make mistakes do you actually learn. Don't ignore a field without trying it. Always try before you come to a conclusion, and also make sure you're doing due diligence to assessing your experience as well. Sometimes you're not good at something because you didn't learn it properly or you weren't taught it properly. And I have a rule of three in my life. I try to do everything 3 times before I come to a conclusion of saying whether it was good for me or bad for me. I need 3 successes to prove that I'm good at something, and 3 failures to really prove that I'm actually not good at something. And another thing that I always tell people is there are things that you're good at and there are things that you're not good at. There are things that you would want to do and things that you don't want to do. It's like a grid. Things that you're good at, not good at, you want to do and you don't want to do. If you're good at something and you want to do something, that's a major part of your career. If you're good at something, but if you don't want to do it, that's your secondary career. I mean, you just do it for the sake of, because you're good at it and somebody's valuing it. If you're not good at something, but you want to do it, that's your growth area. You focus on trying to moving this upwards. And there are certain areas that you clearly know that you're not good at and you don't want to do it at all. That is something that you need to address and identify at a younger age, because you don't want to waste 10 years of your life working in this particular box. It's okay to work on this box because this will ultimately give you money, but it won't give you happiness. This will give you frustration, but at least it will give you a lot of happiness. This will give you money and happiness. Now, this is the boss that you don't want to waste your time on. And that is something that I tell all of my young students and my colleagues to identify that at a younger age. Because I did that at a very young age.
you're just like stuck or struggling or don't know what to do, like that's okay. Like go talk to other people. And it's hard, but be vulnerable and be like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like most people will just be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing either, but like we'll just do our best and we'll just keep going, you know?